Welcome to A Few Thoughts About, the show where we dig into thinking and how it shapes our experience of life. Each week, I share insights and observations to get you thinking. No long lectures, just quick, thought-provoking episodes to shift perspectives so that you can make the change you want to make. Let's get into it. Hey, so before we get started, I want to invite you to try something out, right? One of the things that I get questioned about all the time is like, what is it actually like to work with a coach? Like, what does it feel like? How do you engage with it? And so I put this intro course together to give you a taste of that, to give you a taste of some of the things that I like to talk about and work on. And so this course, and it's totally free, completely free, is about thought, is about working with thought and what you can do to change how you feel right now. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that I talk about with my clients, especially in the beginning. This can be incredibly helpful if you're just looking for a free way to sort of reframe or change the way you think. Check this out. So you can go to scottpeniard.com/intro, INTRO, and you can get signed up. It's totally free, and it's a great way for you to just get a taste of what some of this stuff is like. So scottpeniard.com/intro. Go check it out. I'd love to have you try it out. That's it for now. Let's start the show. Well, hello there, and welcome to A Few Thoughts About Your Questions. Part 1. Thank you to those of you who wrote in with questions. I have enough that I'm going to actually do 2 episodes of answering questions. So I have sort of synthesized and combined some of them because there's like similar topics and similar ideas. And so we're going to have 2 episodes, each with about 4 questions. And I'm going to answer them and I'm going to go into them. So this is part 1. If you submitted a question, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. If you are hearing this and you are thinking, oh shit, I would love to submit a question, but I didn't do it yet, never fear. You can always go to scottpeniard.com/podcast. There's a form there for you. You can submit a question. I will either answer it here on the air or I'll write you back and answer it there. So one way or another, we will get you an answer to your question. One of the things that I love so much about this internet world is the sort of direct connection that I can have. So it's not like reading a book or something when you're like, geez, I wonder what the answer to this question is. Like, you can actually reach out and ask me. So please do. I love getting email. I love answering questions. So why don't we just dive right in? Question number 1 is this: how do I get started on this process of quitting drinking? There's so much information out there. I feel completely overwhelmed. And I just have to say, on a personal note, it's funny because this world has changed so much since I was in the process of quitting drinking, and the number of websites and blogs and podcasts and YouTube channels and books and programs has just exploded. And so, yeah, it is really easy to feel overwhelmed. Now, I have my personal thoughts on what happened to be the best ways to quit drinking. But that is obviously for what worked for me and the sort of work I do now. But my suggestion is, before diving in with someone, right? Before really deciding like, oh, I'm going to take the plunge right now, spend some time and listen to different people, listen to different podcasts, listen to different coaches, go to watch different YouTube videos, read different books, like look around for something that feels right to you. What does that mean, feeling right? Well, only you are going to be able to, are going to be able to determine that. The reality is that whatever it is you choose is something that you're going to need to live with, to work with. And because you want this process to work, it's got to be something that you enjoy, right? It's got to be something that you want to keep coming back to. So, there's a lot of different means and methods of quitting drinking, right? There's a lot of different philosophies around it. So maybe for you, something in AA speaks to you. Wonderful. right? Maybe that's not the case. Maybe something more like what I do or what we do over at Present and Sober speak to you. Amazing. Great, right? Maybe there's something in smart recovery. Maybe there's something in going to work with a counselor. Spend some time looking around. The good news about there being so much stuff out there is that a lot of stuff is free. Not in the sense of like, like big long courses or anything like that, but like there's enough out there that you can really get a sense. Like if you listen to my podcast, you get a really good sense of who I am, right? And the sort of conversations I have. If you listen to or say watch YouTube videos, you'll get a sense of other people. So spend some time and I mean, this is cheesy as hell, right? But like listen to your heart. listen to how you're feeling and then move in that direction. So you'll listen to some people and you're like, ooh, I don't like the way this feels, right? Maybe it feels like too high pressure sales, or maybe it feels like too shame ridden, message, or maybe it feels too loose, right? Could be the other direction. Whatever that is, listen to it. And when you find something you connect with, when you find someone you connect with, also listen to that and use that as something that kind of points you in the right direction. So of course, dear questioner, I would love to say, well, get started by going on over and engaging with us at Present and Sober. And, we actually do have amazing stuff coming out, which I don't think by the time I'm recording this, I don't know if it's public yet, so I'm not going to spill the beans, but it's really great. And there's going to be a whole thing you can do to quit drinking over there. I'd love to give you that specific direction, but I know the thing that's going to help you the absolute most is that you are going to find someone, a message, a person, something that clicks with you. And that is huge. So look for that. Look around, spend some time, and then engage with it. If you want, you can set a time frame on it too. Like I find that people often are like, well, if I just look forever, I'll never do things. All right, great. Give yourself 3 weeks. Give yourself 4 or 5 evenings, on Google, right? Whatever it is, put a timeline around it. And then at the end of that, you can make a decision. So I get feeling overwhelmed, but that's actually a really good thing. It means that you have so many choices. And your job isn't like, which one's going to work best for me or any of that. Although that can be a question you can ask. But your job is to look for the thing that feels the best and listen to that, because that's going to lead you in the direction you want to go. So thank you for that question. Question number 2, what is the biggest challenge you faced in getting sober? And how did you deal with it? It's really interesting in thinking back to how differently I used to engage with things. And so what I did is I went back. I had an idea what the answer to this question was, but every once in a while I like to go back and consult old journals and things I wrote at the time. And it turns out my memory was correct. The biggest challenge I faced was stress, anxiety, a lot of anger. And I kind of put all those in the same bucket. And so when I was going through this process, it was very clear to me before I quit drinking, like, I got to figure this shit out. Like I was at a place where my finances weren't in very good shape. There were other sort of personal difficulties, and part of that was why my finances weren't in good shape. There was, I was not super happy, even though the place I worked was great, but it was in this engineering gig that I knew wasn't for me. And there was a lot of travel and there was a lot of pressure and yada, yada, yada. And so I felt that very, very strongly. And it was a huge reason that I drank. Right. And I would say that my biggest challenge was learning how to deal with those things. Now, there's a really interesting twist with this, because, part of what I was doing with alcohol was trying not to feel these things. Right. So I would come home and I would remember on my drive home, I'd be thinking about, this apartment we lived in, which was, it was nice, but it wasn't where I wanted to be. Or I would think about the fact that I haven't taken a vacation in 10 years, or the fact that how am I going to afford Christmas presents, or, just all of this stuff, which is, not abnormal stuff. I'm not unique here. And so I would start getting all tense and worked up. And then I was like, well, I need a drink. And so I would drink and it would numb that. And I thought for a long time that that's how I was dealing with it, because it felt like these other problems were sort of intractable, right? Like, I can't do anything right now to fix my finances. I can make different decisions and maybe over time things change, but like, it's nothing I can do right now. And it's a problem right now, right? I can't really, I've got to deal with this anger, and it was anger that I had in multiple parts of my life, and I got to figure out how to do with it. And that's not really something I can deal with right now. Like, it's not going to go away. And so the thought was, well, alcohol gives me a rest from it. Well, I realized something one day. I started to realize, I'm drinking to numb these feelings, but I'm still feeling these feelings, right? Like, they're still coming up. And so that was kind of an insight for me of like, maybe this alcohol thing isn't really doing it for me, right? Maybe this alcohol thing isn't really the magic pill that I thought it was. And so I started looking at other ways of solving those things. And I started thinking about, wait, like, there are things I can do to maybe have like fewer annoyances, or maybe there's a way to shift perspective. So I started working on all these things. All of this, by the way, before I quit drinking, because I thought, well, maybe if I fixed all of this stuff, maybe if I felt better, I, don't have to quit drinking, or I'll just drink less, which, by the way, more on that coming later. Well, that didn't work, right? So I started shifting frames, but what that showed me is it showed me that change is possible, right? It showed me that just changing the way I think can change the way things feel, and then that changes everything. And so the way that I dealt with this challenge of dealing with my emotions, of dealing with my feelings, was to walk right into them. See, I pushed through this idea that I had, because over time with alcohol, like, I really thought I needed alcohol to deal with these things, to handle these things. The thought of feeling that anger or frustration or sadness or whatever it was, the thought of feeling that without alcohol was genuinely scary to me. And then all of a sudden, I realized I could do it. All of a sudden, and I didn't have this language at the time, this is something that's developed as time's gone on. All of a sudden I realized, like, no, it's okay. Like, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be angry. And so that's what I did, is I let myself be mad. I let myself feel that frustration. And it was through that I was able to work through it. And I realized that there was nothing to be afraid of. So that was a very long answer to that question, but that was the biggest challenge, was like, how was I going to deal with this? And it turned out the solution to dealing with the anger and frustration and everything else was just to let myself feel it. And I turned out to be okay. So, next question. What did you tell family and friends, especially those who you told multiple times that you were going to quit? Oh man, this one comes up so often. Here's the reality, right? Unless someone else has dealt with this process, they have no idea that you were absolutely 100% dead fucking serious every other time you told them. Like, it felt like this was it. You felt good about that. So they don't understand that, like, you weren't actually fibbing. Like, you really meant it, but then it didn't work out that way. And so we end up in this situation. Like, I know that happened with me and my wife. My wife was amazing. She was super supportive. But I also know when I told her, like, all right, a couple days, this is it. I know that there was a little bit of an eye roll there, not visible, but like an internal eye roll, right? An internal, like, well, all right, heard this before. And that's understandable, right? And so here's what I did. There were a few people in my life that I had confided in that, like, I was going to do this. And after those attempts, I found that, like, the embarrassment that I felt was pretty intense, and I didn't like it. And so what I did when I actually did take the plunge is I told one person at first. And that person that I chose was my wife. She was incredibly supportive and just so helpful on this entire journey. And honestly, I had no idea what was going to happen. And I'm thinking, like, I might be super duper cranky here. So, you should probably know. And then I waited, right? And I waited time. And even people, like, I have no reason not to tell my parents, but I didn't even tell my parents for like 30 days. It was almost a month in. Because I was feeling that way. I was feeling like, man, this is new shaky ground for me, right? And I wanted to explore it and be able to talk about it better. Now, I had my wife, which was incredible. Within about a week or so, I had told a group, an online self-improvement group I was part of. Between those guys and my wife, I had support and it felt amazing. And so when people ask me this question, my answer often is, you don't have to tell everyone. You don't deserve, no one deserves an explanation from you, right? Like you can tell or not tell as many people as you want, but make sure that you have some level of support, right? There's a ton of, per the first question, there's a ton of online support groups and places you can go to talk about it, including Present and Sober, by the way, which I recommend you check out. There are lots of places you can talk about it, but just make sure that you have a few people that you can chat about it with. But no, you don't need to announce it. You don't need to, tell your coworkers, right? And honestly, early on for a lot of us, those sort of explanations tend to go on and be rambly because we're nervous and we're emotional. You don't have to, right? It's completely and totally up to you. And then you'll know when the time is right. Again, for me, there was zero pressure in telling my parents this stuff, but like I didn't want to fail. And so I knew, when I got to about a month, I'm like, oh, this is feeling good. And then I was comfortable saying like, hey, I haven't drank in a month, and like that was very, very positive. So there you go, right? Like make sure you have some support, but you really don't have to tell people. You do you and kind of move throughout your life. Last question. I apologize. This episode's a little bit longer than I anticipated. But last question is here. What does it feel like to be sober after a year? It's funny, I synthesized this question out of like several questions that came in that were different versions of this. And thinking about the answer to this is really funny to me because what happens after a year for a lot of people is we're thinking about it way less. And even saying that to someone who's in the middle of trying to wrestle with this, it seems like, how is that even possible? For so many of us, this process with alcohol becomes like an almost singular focus, right? It's like almost the thing. Like I know for me, it was pretty much constantly on my mind from the moment I woke up in the morning till the moment I went to bed. Like it was always there. And it's funny to say that like, yeah, after a year, certainly, and for many people much sooner, it's just not. There's like more space in your brain. And there are a lot of other benefits too, right? Like we feel a lot better physically, we sleep better, a lot of things improve. And I don't mean to skip over those things, but that one thing, that there's so much more space in your brain, that you feel so much calmer and more relaxed, that one thing alone is worth the price of admission. And so the way I like to answer this question is that after a year, a question like this doesn't really enter your mind as much, right? When we move on with our lives, I always talk about this idea of growing into a person who doesn't drink. When we first quit drinking, we're a person who used to drink, but then we continue to grow and change. And like that new version of us doesn't drink. Like, I don't know how many versions of Scott I am past that version that quit drinking, but this version and the last few versions of Scott don't drink. Not that I used to drink, I just don't. And so as you do this and as your life moves on, things look completely different. And that's the thing that I really want you to take away from this question, is that you can move through this. You can move past this. And then this is behind you. So this suffering, this constant thinking, this feeling stuck, all of this stuff that is so big and it's so intense. And I get it. And it is not fun to go through, but it is very temporary. And once you start getting time under your belt, it quickly recedes. And then you have new horizons you can pursue, right? New directions you can go. And so what does it feel like after a year? It feels wide open. It feels like we have our lives back, essentially. And we're able to start building and doing the stuff that we want to do. So Well, there you go. That is the first of 2 Q&A episodes. I'll be back next week with the next one. Of course, if you have a question or a thought, or you just want to reach out, head on over to scottpiniard.com/podcast. You can always get in touch with me there. Like I said, it is not too late to submit questions. Feel free to do it. I might use it for an episode. I might just email you back and say hi. Whatever it is, I love to hear from you. scottpiniard.com/podcast. That is it for me, and I will be back next week with more questions.
What should we